This is the story of Davy Jones, not that Davy Jones, the Bowie one, but it could have been the other one on Film Threat Reviews. Hi, I'm Alan Ning. I'm with Zorianna Kit, and today we review Stardust. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below on what you thought of the film. In 1971, a 24-year-old David Bowie goes on his first road trip to America with his publicist, only to be met with a country not ready for him. It's directed by Gabriel, stars Johnny Flynn as David Bowie, Marc, Maron, and Jena Malone. So this is something that comes up a lot when we see films about people, biopics. It's just how much research do you really need to know about that person? Because I felt like when I was watching Stardust, this is part of David Bowie's history that I don't know a whole lot about.
Also, the other thing is when you think of biopics, especially the recent ones, Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man, you think that if it's going to be about someone famous whose music is famous, that you're going to get some of that music in the movie too. This is not that movie. There's actually not a single Bowie song.
He does a lot of covers in this one.
Yes. Exactly. So it's not that kind of toe tapping, singing the songs in your seats kind of movie. It's, it's almost a film that doesn't really even need to be about Bowie per se. It's more like a coming of age of an artist and how an artist was formed. I mean, when the movie starts, they explain that there's a title that comes on. It says that this film is mostly real. And the press notes refer to this movie as speculative fiction. So, it is hard to say what happened in this 1971 period of David Bowie's life that was real versus what was fictionalized.
Yeah, that was the thing that struck me really through the first two acts was, am I really watching David Bowie? Or, I mean, this is the expectation they're giving you, is that this is a David Bowie story. And yes, they're playing around with it, but at the same time, it was like, he kind of looks like David Bowie. He doesn't sing any of the songs, but there's a level in which you have to convince me that this is the character, and I just don't feel like the film did that.
Yeah, I just kind of threw that out the window right away, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to follow this British artist who had a hit record. He's got another one that's tanking, and he's come to America for the first time to try and make it big. And this is the road trip between him and his publicist to try to make it in America. That's the basic premise. And so
so did you like that first half, or first two acts, I should say?
Well, I did find it interesting. I found it interesting when he arrives in America. The way he's dressed is not accepted by customs. He gets grilled about his sexuality and why he has dresses in his suitcase. That sort of unfair treatment. The record company that promised him a big rollout, it turns out, the publicist picks him up with his own mother and he goes back to the guy's house. It's not a hotel that he's staying at. He's staying at the guy's family home. So this type of adventure, so to speak, was a ride that I was willing to go along. Look, I didn't know what was real and what was not. In fact, after the film ended, I went on Wikipedia to see if this road trip happened, if the flashbacks about his family's mental illness with schizophrenia and his brother being committed for schizophrenia was actually real. And to be honest, Alan, I couldn't find anything about the 1971 period. Like it doesn't exist. Not on Wikipedia. I mean, I didn't delve in deeper, but I don't know where all this information's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where you just kind of have to accept the story as it is. And part of me during this front half is, if you're doing it on a beloved singer and rock star, you kind of get that his early career, he may have done questionable things, but really in those first two acts, I really didn't like this character at all. I understood where he was coming from and why he was acting the way he was and the fears he had with the mental illness. But at the same time, he was just not, he succumbed to his drug abuse. He succumbed to just this rock star lifestyle. And to be quite frank, the only good people in the movie was the record company and the publicist played by Marc Maron. It seemed like every piece of advice everyone was giving him was spot on, and the character here just wouldn't follow it. And to be honest, then he comes off kind of like a D, in a way.
No, well, that's the thing. He comes to America because his goal is to be famous. He wants to be in Rolling Stone. Yet any interview opportunity that his manager, who's working so hard to get for him, he just self-sabotages. So it's not clear what he wants. But on the other hand, you could say that this is a guy who is sort of like a deer in the headlights. There's this cultural connection that he just can't quite make with middle America when he goes to these radio stations. They don't know what to make of him, the way he looks and the way he dresses. And in his own interviews, he doesn't know what he stands for as an artist. He doesn't know who he is when they ask him these questions. And so one might say that during the course of this movie, he finds who he is, which then takes us to the end scene where he finds who he is. And then that's it.
Honestly, that third act is amazing. The transition from the second to third act and the revelations that occur there and the things that lead up to, or basically the foundation of who we know as David Bowie happens there. My issue is, we have two acts to go through first, 2/3 of a movie. And we're just watching, I'm just watching, like you said, an unlikable guy who's constantly self-sabotaging himself. And it's really not until you get to that transition where it's like, oh, this is starting to become a really good movie right now.
The other thing that was very odd, besides the fact that we don't hear any of Bowie's music, is that there is one icon in the film that's a plot point in the story. He goes to see Andy Warhol. He goes to this party. And the thing is we don't even get to meet Andy Warhol in this movie. He just comes out from the party and tells his publicist, that Andy Warhol wouldn't even look at him. So it's this weird story where I don't quite understand what the purpose of that was. And there was no interaction that was on camera. Everything took place through an exposition afterwards. And I don't know why we couldn't even see someone portraying Andy Warhol. I don't understand the cinematic sense of that decision.
I think that what that does is it shows that he's not who he thinks he is, and which is probably why they didn't show him. Because I think at that time they're mostly focusing on the publicist at that time. I'll say one last thing about pacing. The transition to that third act happens literally like a light switch. It's like they took the story, flipped it on, and then it goes into an entirely new and better movie.
Yeah, and then it ends. And then so you're just like, oh, I thought we were just getting started here.
So my feeling is you were kind of, you had to force yourself to kind of get into the movie. I'm not sure you liked the ending as much as I did, but my guess is you probably gave it maybe a 6 or a 7.
Yeah, I gave it a 6.5. Split the difference between the two. The thing is that I did enjoy the performances. I thought the acting on everyone's part was great. It actually took me to almost the very end to figure out that Jena Malone played his wife.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until the credits. It's like, oh, that's Jena Malone.
Yeah, and she was probably the most interesting one in this film because she had this agenda. And she was quite forceful, and she was the most colorful one out of everyone. And I would have loved to have seen that relationship evolve, and more the dynamics around that. That to me was a missed opportunity. But again, the story was more about his time in America, not.
And she makes an impact every time she appears on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's how good that performance is.
Yeah. I think you probably gave it a 7. I think you liked it a little bit more than I did, perhaps, or around the same.
Yeah, I gave it a 6, and I pretty much for the reasons I stated. The first 2 acts was just a lot to get through, and there's a point where you have to manage how you feel about the character, and really near the end, I was starting to feel pretty pissed off at this guy. It's like, just get your act together, because clearly you're the one who's the problem here.
Yeah, but clearly, we all know what happened to David Bowie afterwards. We all know his legacy. We all know his subsequent fame. Yeah. So somewhere along the lines, he did get himself together enough and did find the artist within to become David Bowie.
And that's the redeeming moment of the movie, I think.
Yes, exactly. I just think there's another biopic to be made at some point later on in life.
A real one, maybe.
With real David Bowie music, yes.
All right. Well, with that, be sure to like, subscribe, comment below as to what you thought of Stardust. Did you agree with us? We want to know. So with that, let's get out of here.